This looks like the end of the film. This could be the network.
We'll know that the round table is over when this is full of water.
Well, because I used to joke that the water bottle could be like a nuclear isotope.
Yes.
Or like a James Bond movie.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just fill it with some blue liquid and it's like, don't drive it.
If we don't like the questions, the piranhas come through this grill.
I know, real.
And that's where the water comes
Or the shark is coming through.
Sharknado.
Sharknado. This is where it forms.
Hey, I finally watched Sharknado.
How was it?
I loved it. Because I have a great relationship with Mark Stern, who's the president of Sci-Fi Program. And he used to always say this was his dream project. And I saw him at Comic-Con, I was like, you finally have your hit. So,
can I say, is it a tornado that sucks up sharks, or is it a number of... There are so many sharks that it forms a tornado.
It's basically tornadoes sucking up sharks. So all the sharks are in one place, and this giant tornado comes, and it starts twisting, and the sharks get with it, get sucked up into the tornado, and then it goes inland. And they fall out of the tornado and start actually like eating people. It's really so goofy. Awesome.
So
I tried to trademark Piranha Cane for the sequel, but it wasn't.
But someone came up with the idea of Shih Tzu tornado, Shih Tzu tsunami, where the tsunami picks up.
Shit tsunami.
Yeah,
there
exactly. Where the tsunami picks up all the little
dogs
and drops them on people, and they start fighting.
But just a film called Shit Tsunami is actually a whole different other thing.
That's what it is.
So, I think I'm agreed with all of us saying that we've loved the entire trilogy and pretty much everything you guys have done up to this point, and it's an honor to be sitting here with you after watching you guys for so many years and get this trilogy completed. Are you guys ready to start? I just kind of jumped in there.
Go for it, man. I'm ready.
I wanted to ask a question last night, so I'm going to ask it right now. Which is, you mentioned the idea for this movie when you guys were writing it, you specifically didn't want to try to reference other pop culture things. Hey, is that becoming harder and harder for you guys to do, to not reference your previous movies or not reference pop culture?
No, it's not. It's not hard. It's just kind of like you impose little kind of rules on yourself, really. You know. So, I think because I think some people would like try to reduce the films to that of like, and I think sometimes when like people read too much into it, it's kind of annoying sometimes because people sort of see like sort of something in there that's unintentional. So I think, and also because in a way, like what we wanted to do is actually sort of create like a new threat. With Shaun of the Dead, we were setting a film that was within George Romero's universe. That was like our rule, was that it should abide by the same rules that are in his films. In Hot Fuzz, it was about the difference between like the reality of being a policeman in the UK and the fantasy of being in a Michael Bay, Tony Scott kind of like cop movie, or action movie rather. But with this one, like because the sort of the sci-fi element is a metaphor for their mixed emotions about their hometown, then we not only had to sort of create something that, even if it's influenced by different writers and and different sort of like movies and TV shows, we still had to create our own particular version for the threat, And so in that sense, there wasn't sort of like, but in any of the, like sort of we don't, I don't know. I think so we wanted to do that. It wasn't difficult though, And in fact, we nearly didn't like. There's a bit where they mentioned the knife game from Aliens, and we nearly didn't put that in because we didn't want to reference the movie. And then we thought, it's fine.
It was worth it
because everybody's tried that at some point.
Yes. In fact, we met Bill Paxton at Comic-Con, and he told us the story of.
I was at a party with Bill Paxton at Comic-Con. So.
He came to our party. He came up to us and told us that he loved Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. And I was like, oh man, you got to come and see the new one tomorrow night because we reference a scene that you're in. And he actually told us a story about.
There's also a difference in referencing and mentioning. Like we mention Aliens, we don't reference it. In the past, we've relied on people's prior knowledge of other films in order to get points across. Particularly like when Nick and I did Paul, because it was a love letter to that kind of film. We filled it with little references so that people knew that we were wearing our hearts on our sleeves. Because in some respects, that film was about those films. This film, we wanted to be its own thing, its own science fiction. It wasn't set in anyone else's universe but our own. Since we were resolutely anti making any kind of sly winks, you can't help but see the DNA in it. In Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Invaders from Mars, Stepford Wives, and for us more sort of willingly the kind of the British science fiction literature of John Wyndham and John Christopher and the Quatermass films, that kind of stuff. But we didn't want to ever at any point. There's one Windshire Ale is a reference.
Oh yeah, there's one extremely obscure reference to the Midwich Cuckoos. Is that the name of the brewery is Windshire, which is the name of the fictional county in like John Wyndham's The Midwich Cuckoos. But that's about it.
One thing that really amped up between the three movies is, Shaun of the Dead, the action scenes were funnier. Hitting somebody with a pool cue and throwing records at them. Hot Fuzz, you had the very Michael Bay-esque jumping through the air shooting guns. And then
John Woo-esque.
John Woo. I'm sorry, you're right. John Woo is actually where I was going kind of with it in Jet Li, and this one just kind of jumps off the screen with you guys being awesome martial artists. And then when you're in the bar and you pick up, which you can see in any old kung fu movies, some guy picks up two things and then you're just, and it looks legit. What brought in that amazingly high level martial arts choreography, and then what did you guys do to get ready for it? Because like I said, it looked legit on screen.
Well, it's just what we do.
They can talk about the reality of practice, but the theory with it is this idea that like as they get drunker, they get more courageous and boisterous in that way of the phrase Dutch courage in terms of like you do things when you're drunk that you wouldn't dream of doing sober. But what we actually tried to design, what we called it pub fu, we designed this fighting styles of various things that like sort of have come from youth, like sort of like rugby moves, like wrestling moves that they may have like sort of tried, like trying to ape WWE at home.
Yeah,
and even just kind of like sort of like almost like slap fighting and stuff. You notice that the blanks kind of like are trying to suffocate with their hands. And they're always like sort of trying to slap it away and stuff. Yeah. So it was kind of trying to kind of the whole idea of all the fights and even the kind of the baddies themselves is different ways of regressing the actors. Because essentially, like if the movie's like a time travel movie, it's because the time machine is booze itself that will make them seem like little kids again, and they're regressing. Like the baddies look like action figures. They rip apart like action figures. The blue stuff like is supposed to be like ink to make them look like they're like school, and they got ink all over their like sort of faces and hands, which is how I ended pretty much every school day. So that was the idea, was that sort of to create these kind of like sort of sprawling bar brawls that like seem to have erupted from like school basically.
Yeah, but I think there were a lot more bar fights as well, at that age.
Yeah.
You got into a lot more fights when you were 16 or 17, They seemed to be a lot of them in pubs where I was. I don't think I had anything to do with that. I think it's happened that, so I think they had more practice than we had.
Okay. And even a combat role, I saw you hit on screen perfectly.
Oh my God. No, it's me. It's all me.
That's impressive.
And to kind of piggyback off of what he just asked was, the one thing I noticed was there was initial martial arts, but then there was a lot of just really fun, ugly fighting. How do you balance out the choreographed martial arts with just the really fun, over-the-top, ugly fighting you guys were doing, where it was just kind of like you were just doing whatever came. It didn't seem like it was choreographed.
Well, it's supposed to be like a broad. I mean, the key thing to that is that it's all very heavily choreographed. But the key thing is that the actors have to pull it off, and the actors have to put personality into the fighting. And that's two things. It's like not only do these guys bring personality to it, but it's also making sure that in the stunt design that the characters don't get lost. So the 5 people involved in the fights all have slightly different styles, and then Eddie Marzan is kind of like the sort of the shrinking violet. Like he sort of goes immediately like sort of scurries off to get out of the fight. He's like the pacifist for most of it. But I think it's about kind of making sure that that when you start fighting, you don't stop acting.
Yeah, yeah. Because if you hand over a fight to stunt performers, then it's all about the stunt men and women, and they're not actors. They're not playing the roles that they're doubling for. So the characters can get lost in those moments, and so you see some pretty impressive fighting. But where have the characters gone? Suddenly they've dropped out. And even though that these fights are elaborate, our thoughts were that they're so drunk that it just goes mental, and it's like they get this. It's not like they're proficient in any martial art, but they can summon the will and energy to sort of like fight their way out of these situations.
Drunken master.
It's drunken master. Yeah, that we love, absolutely.
Yeah,
Your character